We're gonna start with hip external rotation. The easiest starting point for our hip external rotation stretches is the 90-90 position. I'm gonna have Andy get into 90-90 right now. We have a couple of blocks here because sometimes they are necessary to modify positions as needed. So we can do a couple of things in 90-90. Well, first things first, 90-90 is kind of like it sounds. We want a bunch of 90-degree angles. So we want not just 90 at the hip, we want 90 at the ankle, we want 90 at both hips, we want 90 at that knee, we want 90 at that ankle. And then really when we get down to it, we want a spine that is as vertical as possible. If we can't get into this position, we have blocks, and we can do a couple of things. One of them is I can give this to Andy and he can sit on it. What that does is it elevates him and allows him to sit more upright. When we do that, we still want this to touch the ground. So he's gonna lean forward at me there, and we're gonna try to stay upright. That just allows us into a little bit of an easier position into our 90-90. Or if it is too easy, snag that block out of there once. Andy's kind of the perfect patient to be in standard 90-90, but if we wanted to make it harder, we can also elevate his foot and keep that knee down. But as you can see, that's gonna be really uncomfortable because that's too challenging right now. I'm gonna snag that out. The yoga blocks, they work for a lot of things. Modifying positions, or even they can be handholds if you don't like your hands on the ground exactly, and they can adjust size-wise based on how they are orientated. So, pails and rails, in general, what we are shooting for when we're working through this, we're again focusing on external rotation, which is the front hip here. Basically, what we want is for all of this motion to only happen about his hip. We're gonna try to keep spine straight. We are gonna try to keep everything else out of play here. We are only bending at the hip. That means that Andy is gonna think about taking his belly button, and if I hooked it and I pulled it almost 45 degrees upwards, he's gonna try to pull in this direction as far as he can until he runs out of space in his hip. What he should find is a pretty good stretch along the back side of his leg into his hip somewhere along that stretchy tissue. He's gonna run into a spot where he can't come forward any farther without bending here. We don't wanna do that. We just talked about it, right? We wanna keep straight. A lot of people are going to try to touch their chest to their knee, and we're trying to avoid that. We don't want your spine involved here. We're trying to mobilize your hip. When he is into this position, we're gonna sit here for 2 minutes, and that's gonna feel like a long 2 minutes. Your foot might go a little tingly. As long as it is just that pins and needles feeling, we're not gonna worry about it, but we do wanna stay out of anything painful. So if this hurts, we can always back up a little bit. We can do our pails and rails, not fully at end range. You know, we can just sit right wherever it hurts. Where we are now, we're just gonna kind of hang out. Pails and rails, what they are, a pail is a progressive angular isometric load. Basically, that means the progressive tissue, which is the tissue that's being stretched, it's the stuff we're trying to make longer, we're going to isometrically contract it, which that means we're going to take the bottom leg and we're gonna push it down into the floor. We can think about that in a few ways. The easiest is like if this floor was squishy, we were gonna try to put a big dent in it without the upper body moving. And then a rail, which is a regressive angular isometric load. Your regressive tissue is the inside stuff. It's the stuff that's shortening. Basically, we're going to contract that, again, isometrically. The real difference here is we're going to move a little. So it's an isometric contraction at the end of it, but in the beginning, when you actually try to contract the short tissue, we want Andy to try to pull his body closer to his leg when he contracts it. That should have been about 2 minutes. What we're gonna do here, so Andy's gonna think about taking his foot and his knee, and he's gonna drive them down in a slow ramp. So he's gonna start at 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, until he is pushing as hard as he can without pain. I want him to hold that for 4 to 6 seconds, which should be about now. And then he's going to try and pull himself closer using the muscles in his leg. So he's gonna contract like he's trying to lift off the ground, but that thing is stapled to the floor, so what it's gonna do is bring his body closer. When he can't move anymore, he's gonna keep pulling. He hasn't quit, he hasn't quit, he hasn't quit, he hasn't quit, he's pulling, and then he's gonna relax but stay right here. So now all the tension leaves, but we stay in the stretch. That's a rails contraction. So we did pails down into the floor, we did rails in, he's gained a little bit of range, and now we sit here and we deep breathe. So big breaths in, big breaths out. We relax and we try to tell your brain that this position's okay and that we want to maintain this. At the top of the minute here, we're gonna do another one. And basically it's another set. We're gonna do this 3 times in a row, and every single time we do it, we should gain a little bit more range of motion. So right about now, we're going to have Andy again, that slow ramp up. It is going to feel way worse the second time we do it, but he is going to drive that leg down and down and down and down and hold and hold and hold. When he gets there, he's going to relax and then reverse again, and he's going to try to lift that leg off the floor, but it's stapled down. It is pulling his body in and in. He's going to run out of space, but he's going to keep on pulling, keep on pulling, keep on pulling. And then he relaxes but stays right here. And again, deep breaths. Tell your brain it's okay, because it is. It's typically at this point your foot is a little bit tingly, really, really normal. It will go away right away, or at least it should. If it doesn't, this isn't the right exercise for you. Good. And again, we're hanging out here again, deep breathing and trying to relax until we get to the top of the next minute. Good. And then when we're here, exact same thing again. So Andy's just going to ramp up. Typically this third one, as he ramps up to push down as hard as he can, is going to be by far the hardest. And sometimes it's, instead of pushing at an 8 out of 10, we're going to be at a 4, because it's a hard thing to do. And then he's going to reverse again, and he's going to pull in, pull in, pull in. We should still gain a little bit, not a lot. We should be really close to everything that we got here. And keep on pulling, and then relax, but stay put again. You worked really, really hard through those 3 sets to be in this position. Don't pop right out of it. We always stay till the top of the next minute. This entire process, from start to finish, should take us 5 minutes. That's 5 total minutes of sitting in hip external rotation. It is a long time, but it is by far the best way that I know of to get more hip range of motion and keep it. It's great. It's awesome. Sucks a little bit while you're doing it. Good. And then we are just going to relax and come right out of this.